Anthony Hopkins, a towering presence whose name has become inseparable from the very language of cinema itself. A figure not merely admired, but absorbed into the collective memory of audiences across generations. From Britain to every corner of the world, his work has lingered long after screens have gone dark, reshaping how fear, restraint, intelligence, and humanity can exist within a single frame. When he brought Hannibal Lecter to life in The Silence of the Lambs, he did not rely on spectacle or excess. He carved terror from stillness, patience, and an unblinking gaze, leaving an imprint so deep it altered the grammar of performance forever. That presence did not fade when the film ended. It followed culture itself, embedding his image into the quiet spaces where imagination meets unease. Yet legends are not born in applause. They emerge from places far quieter, far harsher. Hopkins came from a modest working-class family in Wales, a childhood shaped not by privilege, but by isolation and uncertainty. Long before he mastered the art of command, he learned what it meant to feel unseen. In classrooms where letters refused to settle, where attention passed him by, he absorbed the weight of being overlooked. Teachers misunderstood him. Peers ignored him. And so, before he ever learned confidence, he learned withdrawal. Silence became familiar. Solitude became practice. That early invisibility did not vanish with age. It hardened into discipline, into observation, into a way of reading the world without words. Art arrived not as escape, but as lifeline. Music, painting, repetition, these were the first places where order replaced confusion. At the piano, he found something that did not judge or abandon him. In color and sound, he built a private structure that held when the outer world did not. Those early rituals forged habits that would later define his craft: patience, control, and a relentless attention to detail. Before he ever spoke a line on stage, he had already learned to read faces, pauses, breath, and silence. Emotion became a language long before text ever cooperated. When Hopkins encountered the example of Richard Burton, another son of the same Welsh town who had claimed the world's great stages, something shifted. It was not admiration alone. It was permission, proof that origin did not dictate destination. From that moment, the path toward theater and performance no longer felt imaginary. It felt possible. The wounds of childhood did not disappear. They traveled with him, shaping how he entered rooms, how he listened before speaking, how he carried restraint like a blade honed by necessity. Those scars became assets. They gave his performances their unsettling calm, their dangerous precision. Training at drama schools and later at the National Theatre placed him beneath towering expectations. Surrounded by masters, working under the immense presence of Laurence Olivier, Hopkins often felt like an intruder waiting to be exposed. Applause never arrived as relief. When curtains fell and theaters emptied, silence returned, heavier than before. It was there, in that quiet, that alcohol began to whisper its promises. At first its soft edges. Then it lingered. What the world would later celebrate as brilliance was, behind closed doors, sustained by endurance and an unrelenting inner pressure. Even so, his ascent could not be denied. When fate demanded that he replace Olivier on stage with no preparation, humiliation stood inches away. Instead of retreating, Hopkins advanced. That night marked the arrival of a force audiences could not ignore. It was not luck. It was the result of countless solitary hours of a man who had trained himself to survive scrutiny without collapse. Film soon followed, and with it, global recognition. Yet acclaim never fully quieted the doubts born long before cameras found him. Then came Hannibal Lecter. Less than 20 minutes on screen, and yet the role eclipsed decades of louder performances by others. Terror distilled into intelligence. Violence implied rather than shown. Control so absolute it froze audiences in place. Awards followed. The world crowned him a genius. But success did not deliver peace. Fame expanded demands, consumed rest, erased boundaries. Applause thundered while exhaustion accumulated. Hopkins would later say that success does not fill you. Standing at the summit only sharpened the contrast between how he was seen and how he felt, and still, he endured. Role after role revealed a range few could approach. Kings and servants, minds fractured by madness, men undone by memory. Even as years advanced, his power did not recede. It refined. In the Father, he transformed fragility into something devastatingly universal, earning another Academy Award and confirming that age had not dimmed him. It had deepened him. Each performance carried the weight of a lifetime shaped by restraint, pain, and survival. Now at 87, time presses closer. Shadows lengthen. Storms strike with sharper precision. Neither Oscars nor knighthood can silence what walks beside him. Yet he remains standing, carrying both the force that built his legend and the cost that came with it. If his work has ever unsettled you, followed you into silence, or changed how you understand performance itself, remember that it was forged not only in triumph, but in endurance. Comment 87 or write Anthony Hopkins to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The world often imagines legends as figures born fully formed, emerging into light without fracture or cost. Anthony Hopkins's life tells a different story, one where ascent and erosion walk side by side. Beneath the acclaim, beneath the steady authority that defined his performances, another struggle tightened its grip quietly, persistently, almost invisibly. Alcohol did not arrive as chaos. It arrived as relief. A pause at the end of punishing days, a softening of the relentless self-scrutiny that never loosened its hold. What began as a momentary refuge slowly hardened into routine. Night after night, the glass lingered longer. The boundary between choice and necessity blurred. By the mid-1970s, the toll had become undeniable. Memory thinned. Days dissolved without edges. Mornings arrived fractured, carrying gaps he could not explain. Health faltered. Energy drained. Relationships strained under the weight of absence. To the outside world, these were years of success, of rising stature and expanding influence. Behind closed doors, they were years of quiet unraveling. Hopkins later spoke of that period without romance or excuse, admitting he drank not to celebrate, but to endure the hours. Alcohol did not bring joy. It dulled awareness. It made survival feel possible when rest no longer existed. Then came the night that divided his life in two. He would later describe waking in his car beneath the cold glow of streetlights, engine running, with no memory of the road that brought him there. The silence inside that vehicle was total. In that stillness, realization arrived with brutal clarity. Everything he had built could vanish in a single moment. Career, family, life itself. In that abyss, something immovable spoke. Not loudly, not theatrically, simply insisting that he stop. In December 1975, Anthony Hopkins chose sobriety. What followed was not a dramatic transformation, but a discipline of ordinary days. One morning at a time. One meeting. One decision repeated until repetition became structure. He later called the journey a miracle made of humility, astonished that clarity returned not through grand gestures, but through consistency. Each day without drink became a quiet victory. Years stacked upon years. Decades passed. Sobriety hardened into one of the central pillars of his life, guarded with the same rigor he brought to his craft, yet recovery did not erase loss. Some distances once created remained. His relationship with his daughter Abigail never fully healed. He acknowledged that truth without bitterness, accepting that not all wounds close, that some are simply carried. He did not hide his story. He stood before others struggling, offering not promises, but honesty. That sobriety is fragile. That change is possible. In 2025, when he marked 50 years without alcohol, the milestone resonated far beyond his own life. Not because it was announced loudly, but because it endured. Parallel to addiction ran another fracture, quieter but equally devastating. Hopkins' first marriage to Petronella Peter Barker began in hope. In 1966, life still carried the fragile belief that work and family could grow together. Their daughter Abigail seemed to seal that promise. For a brief season, home offered refuge. But as ambition intensified and absence became routine, that refuge thinned. By 1972, the marriage ended. The deeper wound lived elsewhere, in the widening silence between father and child. Years later, Hopkins spoke of that distance with words stripped of performance. No defense. No blame. Simply acceptance. He never spoke ill of Abigail. Never reshaped the past to soften its edges. His silence was not indifference. It was responsibility. The recognition that some roles, once missed, cannot be reclaimed. Applause could echo across continents, but it could not fill the space left by a daughter's absence. Even greatness in art could not redeem that loss, asterisk, after the wreckage of his first marriage. Hopkins believed steadiness might still be possible. In 1973, he married Jennifer Linton. For a time, life softened. Friends noticed a gentler presence, a quiet order returning. Their home did not dazzle. It endured. Sobriety took root. Evenings slowed. For years, they built a life measured not in spectacle, but in persistence. Yet time tests even the quietest bonds. Career demands pulled him away. Travel stretched days into nights. Though alcohol was gone, old habits of withdrawal lingered. When closeness demanded more than he knew how to give, distance answered. Their marriage did not collapse in fury. It thinned gradually. The absence of children became a silent ache, especially for Jennifer, whose patience stretched across decades. Hopkins later admitted with weary clarity that he was not built for. Closeness that when things grew complicated, he pulled away. After nearly 30 years, the marriage ended in 2002, not with scandal, but with silence. A different kind of devastation. One that leaves no dramatic scene, only scars that settle quietly and remain. Once again, Hopkins stood alone, admired by millions, yet familiar with rooms too quiet to echo his name. The second marriage did not burn. It dimmed, and in that quiet collapse lived a truth rarely spoken aloud. Not all tragedies announce themselves. Some unfold invisibly, day by day, until nothing remains to hold that peace. When it finally arrived, did so without spectacle. In 2003, at 65, Hopkins married Stella Aroyav. She entered his life not as rescue, but as presence. Where others endured his absences, she offered steadiness. Where silence once pulled heavy in his homes, she brought music, color, and life continuing. Their marriage unfolded quietly, built on balance rather than intensity. There were no children together, no attempt to rewrite the past. Instead, there was freedom. The freedom to love without competing with regret. Hopkins has spoken of Stella with rare openness, crediting her with bringing lightness and equilibrium into his days. With her, sobriety felt less like restraint and more like release. Age softened, gratitude arrived. The restless drive that once consumed him eased into stillness, painting, music, shared mornings. For the first time, belonging replaced survival. Comment or write Rip Anthony Hopkins to honor them. Asterisk, fate, however, had not exhausted its trials. Even after sobriety had steadied him, even after love had finally settled into something durable and kind, Anthony Hopkins was forced again to confront how fragile safety truly is, how easily a lifetime of building can be undone in moments. Fire entered his story not once, but repeatedly, as if testing the limits of what a man can lose and still remain standing. The first devastation arrived quietly and then all at once. In the early 2000s, his London home was consumed by flames. Rooms filled with decades of memory vanished in heat and smoke. Furniture shaped by ordinary days, books heavy with annotations, photographs browned by time, objects that held history rather than value. In less than an hour, what had taken a lifetime to gather was reduced to ash. Hopkins stood amid the ruins, stunned not by the loss of things, but by the erasure of memory itself. A home is more than walls, it is continuity, and that continuity had been stripped away. One fire alone would have been enough to scar anyone, but fate did not stop there. Years later, in 2018, wildfires tore through Southern California, threatening another of his homes. He escaped, spared by distance and timing, yet the warning was unmistakable. Safety once again revealed itself as temporary. Then, in 2025, the warning became reality. In Pacific Palisades, the sanctuary he had rebuilt, the place where sobriety had stabilized and peace had been practiced quietly, was consumed completely. Walls collapsed, roofs caved in. Carefully preserved scripts, awards tucked away, letters saved across decades, all gone in minutes. To lose a home once is agony. To lose it again edges into something almost unspeakable. Hopkins later spoke of standing in the aftermath, the smell of smoke still clinging to the air, feeling not anger, but a heavy clarity. Fire had taken structures, objects, and fragments of history. It had not taken breath. It had not taken presence. It had not taken the will to continue. What mattered most, he realized, was not what could be rebuilt, but what could not be burned. Again and again, fire confronted him with the truth that permanence is an illusion, that even the strongest walls can vanish in a single night, yet each time he remained. The man who once nearly vanished into addiction now met loss with steadiness carved by survival. Flames did not redefine him, they clarified him. Applause fades, houses fall, possessions disappear. What endures is the capacity to begin again. Some losses, however, do not arrive with smoke or spectacle. They arrive in silence. In hospital rooms, in empty chairs that will never be filled again. For Anthony Hopkins, the deaths of his parents marked a deeper, quieter erasure. When his father Richard passed, the baker whose flour-dusted hands had once defined the certainty of home, Hopkins later called it the hardest blow he ever took. Sitting beside the bed, watching strength fade, he understood that no achievement could shield him from that moment. What vanished was not only a man, but the simple fact of being someone's son. Years later, when his mother followed, the final bridge to his childhood collapsed. Returning to her empty house, Hopkins confessed that the walls no longer recognized him. With her went the last echo of unconditional belonging. Even as the world celebrated him as a living legend, he felt untethered, as if no one remained who could say his name the way it once had been said. These were not public tragedies. They were private scars resurfacing in the hollowed men he so often portrayed on screen. Then came the slowest loss of all, the body itself. Age presses without mercy, sparing no one. Hopkins has spoken quietly, of memory faltering, of names hovering just beyond reach, of moments dissolving before they can be fully held. That fear found its most devastating expression in The Father, where he embodied a man unraveling into dementia. Audiences wept because it felt unbearably real. In part it was. The role carried not only technique, but the private dread of someone who senses that the stage inside his own mind may one day dim. Now, mornings arrive more slowly. Bones ache. The mirror reflects not characters, but a finite, aging man. Sometimes he sits at the piano, fingers hovering, pausing as if to confirm that the notes are still there. For someone who once commanded worlds with a glance, confronting frailty has been the most unforgiving script of all. Yet he has not answered it with despair. Instead, he has chosen calm, painting, music, gentle walks with Stella. Gratitude practiced daily, not declared loudly taught. He has learned that life is short, not as a warning, but as truth. The paradox of Anthony Hopkins is this: a man revered across the globe, yet living with the ache of outliving the voices that once anchored him. And still he endures, through grief, through the betrayals of his own body, through silences that would have broken others. His story is not only one of genius, it is a story of survival, of choosing each day to live despite the certainty of loss. Comment 87 or write Rip Anthony Hopkins to honor them. *** today. Anthony Hopkins stands within a chapter of life shaped less by ambition and more by endurance. At 88, the roar that once defined his public existence has softened into something quieter, more deliberate. The world still measures him by milestones, by awards, by figures attached to his name, but those numbers hold little meaning to him now. Wealth accumulated across decades of work in film, theater, television, music, and visual art surrounds him, yet it no longer commands him. Money, he has said, insulates. It protects time and privacy. It does not provide purpose. That lesson arrived only after addiction, fractured families, and repeated loss stripped illusion away. The fortune earned through iconic work now serves a simpler function. It allows him to live without performance, to wake without urgency, to choose when to speak and when to remain silent. Real estate once offered sanctuary, places where sobriety stabilized and peace was practiced quietly. Malibu, London, Pacific Palisades. Each home was less a trophy than a shelter, chosen for privacy and distance from the world's demands. That is why fire cuts so deeply. Not because of financial loss, but because what burned were fragments of a lifetime annotated scripts, handwritten. Notes, paintings, letters, ordinary objects carrying extraordinary memory. Rebuilding after such losses reshaped his understanding of permanence. Walls can be restored. Peace cannot be manufactured. Houses, he now believes, are temporary. What matters is who stands beside you when they fall. In that knowledge, material symbols of success have faded. Cars, properties, possessions, none of it defines him. His world has narrowed by choice. Home, studio, garden, piano. A smaller radius, but a steadier one. Physically, age has made its presence known. Movement is slower. The body lighter, more fragile. Memory sometimes hesitates. Names pause just beyond reach. He has spoken candidly about these moments, not with fear, but with attention. Sleep is protected. Diet is simple. Exercise is gentle. The mind is kept engaged through music and painting rather than strain. The piano remains central, not for performance, but for reassurance. Each day it answers back, confirming that coordination, emotion, and recall still live within his hands. Sobriety, now more than 5 decades strong, is guarded with the seriousness of survival. It is not taken for granted. It is renewed daily. Emotionally, some wounds remain unresolved. His estrangement from his daughter persists, carried without bitterness or defense. The absence of his parents still shadows his reflections. These truths are not denied. They are acknowledged, and alongside them stands stability. His marriage to Stella Aroyav, now more than 2 decades enduring, anchors his life. Their bond is quiet, private, woven into daily rhythm, companionship without correction, presence without demand. Despite stepping back from constant production, Hopkins has not withdrawn from creative life. He continues to choose selective roles, lend his voice to narration, compose original music, and paint. His artwork has found audiences of its own, some pieces selling for significant sums, often directed toward charitable causes. His philanthropy does not announce itself loudly. It persists steadily, supporting addiction recovery, mental health awareness, and arts education. When he marked 50 years of sobriety publicly, the moment resonated worldwide not because it preached, but because it endured. Music, even his brief appearances, quiet piano melodies shared, spare reflections offered have become signals to millions that reinvention does not expire. That survival is not a single act, but a lifelong practice. In these years, his life reads like the final movement of a demanding composition. Fame remains, but it no longer commands him. Wealth surrounds him, but it does not define him. Homes have been lost and rebuilt, yet belonging now lives in people, not places. Time continues to test him. Memory will falter. Strength will wane. These are certainties he does not flee. He has learned to meet them with gratitude rather than resistance. Gratitude for waking up, for shared meals, for the simple fact of breath. When asked what remains after applause fades, after walls fall, after memory itself grows uncertain, his life offers a quiet answer. Meaning is not accumulated. It is practice. Anthony Hopkins' journey is not only a chronicle of genius. It is a testament to survival, to standing again after disappearance, to choosing presence after absence, to finding home after wandering. And if his life, his work, or his endurance has ever unsettled you, strengthened you, or followed you into silence, let that reflection continue beyond this moment. Comment 88 or write R.I.P. Anthony Hopkins to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk, there comes a moment, late in a long life, when the noise of the world finally loosens its grip. Not because the world has stopped watching, but because the watching no longer dictates the rhythm of the days. For Anthony Hopkins, that moment did not arrive suddenly. It arrived gradually, earned through survival, repetition, and the slow acceptance of limits. The man once driven by the need to prove, to endure, to outlast, now lives within a narrower frame that feels, paradoxically, more expansive than anything that came before. He no longer measures time in projects or premieres, but in mornings that begin without urgency, in afternoons shaped by light moving across a room, in evenings where music replaces expectation. The piano remains a constant companion, not as a stage, but as a mirror. Each melody confirms continuity, that something essential still answers back. Painting, too, has become a form of quiet dialogue, color replacing language when words feel unnecessary. These acts are not hobbies. They are anchors, keeping him present in the body and mind that time continues to test. Hopkins understands now what once eluded him. That discipline is not punishment. It is protection. That solitude does not have to mean loneliness. And that peace, when it finally arrives, must be guarded with humility. He has spoken often of gratitude in these years, not as performance, but as practice. Gratitude for the chance to wake up sober. Gratitude for companionship that does not demand explanation. Gratitude for the ability to still create, even as energy wanes. Music, the world, of course, continues to speak his name with reverence. Critics revisit his work. Audiences discover him anew. Younger generations encounter Hannibal Lecter, Stevens, Dr. Ford, the father unraveling into memory, and feel the same quiet shock that earlier audiences once felt. His influence remains woven into the craft itself, not because he chased innovation, but because he pursued truth with relentless restraint. He showed that power does not require volume, that fear can be born from stillness, That vulnerability, when held without apology, can be devastating. Yet what defines him now is not legacy, but presence. He has learned to stay where he once fled, to sit with silence without needing to fill it, to accept regret without letting it poison what remains. The estrangement from his daughter is still there. It has not been rewritten. The absence of his parents still echoes. Age continues to narrow what is possible. These are not footnotes. They are part of the whole, and he does not pretend otherwise. There is a particular dignity in how he carries these truths. Without spectacle, without self-pity, he has said that life is very short, not as lament, but as recognition. A statement shaped by fire, addiction, loss, and endurance. For someone who has lived so many lives on screen, he has learned that the most demanding role is simply remaining present in one's own music, in quieter moments. Hopkins has reflected that he spent much of his life learning how to survive and only later learned how to stay. That insight alone carries the weight of a lifetime. Survival taught him discipline. Staying taught him love. It taught him that belonging does not come from applause or admiration, but from shared space, shared time, shared silence. His marriage to Stella Arrowhave embodies that lesson. Not dramatic, not loud, but faithful. A partnership built not on intensity, but on steadiness. On choosing each other day after day without performance dot as the years advance, he knows the road ahead grows shorter. Memory may falter further. Strength will decline. The final curtain, whenever it falls, will do so without rehearsal. Yet he has shown how to face that certainty with dignity, not by clinging to what was, but by honoring what remains. Breath, awareness, connection, the ability to create, even if only for oneself. Anthony Hopkins' life does not resolve neatly. It was never meant to. It moves instead like one of his performances, layered, restrained, unsettling, and deeply human. A story marked by disappearance and return, by loss that never fully heals, by survival that becomes meaning through practice, and by the quiet understanding that even when much has been taken, something essential can still endure. If his journey has ever stayed with you, if his presence has ever unsettled you, comforted you, or changed how you understand silence itself, then carry that forward. Not as idolization, but as reflection. Because the true measure of a life is not what it gathers, but how it continues to live honestly when gathering is no longer the point. Anthony Hopkins remains, not untouched by time, but shaped by it. And in that endurance, there is something rare, something instructive, something quietly profound. Comment 88 or write RIP Anthony Hopkins to honor them.